Bum, bum. Ba, 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 ba. Hey, everybody. Come on in here. I hope you have your beverages, because coffee with Scott Adams is better with beverages. I think we all know that by now. So for those of you who are quick on your fingers and got in here quickly, grab your warm beverage and or cold beverage and or coffee and or tea and or hot chocolate, and lift your mug to a wonderful day. Let's toast to the golden age. Oh yeah, good stuff. All right, we are going to talk about some of the president's latest tweets. So he's got several good ones here, so we're gonna unpack them all individually. Let's start with his tweet on the Holocaust Remembrance Day. It shows the president and Melania both wearing yarmulkes, or maybe only he is, I can't tell. And he talks about, on Holocaust Remembrance Day, we mourn and grieve the 6 million innocent Jewish men, women, and children, and the millions of others who perished in the evil Nazi genocide. We pledge with all our might and resolve, never again. Now, how do you feel about this if you're one of the, 50 million people who had been duped by the media into believing that he was a Nazi? How do you square that with wearing a yarmulke? So he's got half of the country saying, well, that yarmulke wearing Nazi who's paying respect at the Holocaust Remembrance Day event, how did they square that? Is he still supporting the Charlottesville tiki torches who are chanting with their anti-Jewish slogans? Well, he never was. Surprise! All right, so that's first of all, good persuasion, because it's very visual. So that particular tweet had a visual with it, so it's extra good. He's got one about the tragedy in Afghan, the terrorist attack, but that's just sort of vanilla because it needs to be. All right, here's the good one on DACA. So everyone wondered, or at least a lot of people wondered, why is it that Trump went from offering some kind of path to citizenship for 800,000 people to bumping that up to 1.8 million without that being the subject of a negotiated counteroffer? In other words, it looked like he was negotiating with himself. And smart people said, wait a minute, you don't negotiate with yourself, you make an offer. You wait for the other side to counteroffer, and then you can work toward the middle. But you never make an offer and then go home and come back with another offer that's better. You just don't do that. That's negotiating mistake, number one. But he did that. And so people said, what's going on? Why would he bid against himself, the single most obvious negotiating mistake you could ever make? And a lot of people speculated, including me, that it was more than a negotiation, that he was sort of setting the table for a kind of a kill shot. And here he does the reveal with this tweet. So this is President Trump's tweet about DACA. He says, I have offered DACA a wonderful deal, including a doubling in the number of recipients and a 12-year pathway to citizenship, for two reasons. Number one, because the Republicans want to fix a long-time terrible problem. Now watch how he's taken responsibility, or really credit, away from the Democrats and said, no, it's the Republicans want to solve a long-term problem. So he's reframed it as something Republicans are solving instead of Democrats. So that's good, first of all. And then number two, to show that Democrats do not want to solve DACA, only use it. So here he's admitting it was a setup. By giving them even more than they had asked, it creates an impression in the public that, wait a minute, if you're giving somebody more than they asked, and they're saying no. And not only is it more than they asked, it's double. He doubled it. And they said no. What does that make the Democrats look like? Obstructionists. So somehow he has completely turned around DACA from something that the Democrats wanted and Republicans were resisting to something that Republicans want and Democrats are resisting. Now, of course, the reason Democrats are resisting is because they don't want the other stuff. They don't want the wall fully funded. They don't want changes to chain migration, etc. But it's hard for the public to keep too many things in their head. So this reframe is very clever because it just looks like, wait a minute, Republicans want to keep the DACA people and give them a path to citizenship, and now the Democrats are resisting. That's all the Democrats had. The one thing Democrats had is that they seem better on immigration, and when I say better, I mean for their side, meaning more permissive immigration. He just took that away from them. He just took their strongest play and just took it away from them. Now, in sports, there's a name for that, and it's a well-known strategy. So, and you used to see, who was it? Andre Agassi and Roger Federer, great tennis players. They would do the same thing. So if they'd go against a player, let's say they'd go against a player who had like a famous forehand. It was just like a really good forehand. The top players, instead of hitting to his backhand, which would give his forehand more confidence, because every time he hit it, it'd be like, I got my weapon here. So you got a weapon, I got a weapon, we're about equal. But the great players will go after a lesser player's best shot. So the best players don't hit to his weakness. They hit to his strength, and then they take it away from him. All right, so Federer will go right after a player's best shot and then demonstrate that his best shot is better than that guy's best shot. What does that do to your head? If your opponent takes away your best shot, you already know you're losing. So that's what the president did here. He's going after DACA and immigration. It was the Democrats' best play, and he just sort of took it off the table. Now, it gets even better, because you know what's coming up on Tuesday? State of the Union. So the State of the Union's coming. And poor Democrats just turned down the best offer ever for DACA right before the State of the Union. So the president is going to walk into the State of the Union with the Democrats turning down this best deal they've ever gotten because they don't want several other things like fixes to chain migration and the wall. But here's the problem for the Democrats. The public does want those things. So it turns out that a majority of the public, depends how you word the questions, you can word the question so you get a different result. But if you word it in a normal way, most of the public, the whole public, wants tighter border security with a wall, at least in part of it. And they want some changes to chain migration, and they're not crazy about the lottery, the random lottery. So look at the strong way that the president's going into the State of the Union. Oh my God, he's going in on a high economy. The military is doing great. North Korea is getting flexible. He's appointed judges. And the one weakness he had going into the State of the Union, he just used it to bitch slap the Democrats right before he goes in. It's going to be fresh in your mind on Tuesday. He couldn't be going in. I can't even imagine a stronger way to go into the State of the Union. It's going to be a beat-down slaughter. Now, there was another one that I skipped. There was another tweet from the president on the 26th. He said that DACA has been made increasingly difficult by the fact that crying Chuck Schumer took such a beating over the shutdown that he's unable to act on immigration. So now he's framed crying Chuck Schumer as unable to act. So when you make somebody, if you frame somebody as unable to act, and the only thing that they did before was a shutdown, and that just turned out poorly for them, well, what are you going to do? If he has to act, and the only thing he has as sort of a response would be a shutdown, and you know that's not going to work because it didn't work already, he kind of has to move in the president's direction somehow. All right, let's talk about the JayZ quote. So I assume that JayZ is saying some stuff, anti-President Trump stuff. There must be something fresh. JayZ said, I haven't seen it, but I just assume he said something anti-Trump. So look at the brilliance, and I know I'm always saying the president's quotes are brilliant. They're not all brilliant. You know, nobody is brilliant all the time. But this one uses his technique again. All right. So when he uses technique, he's brilliant, if it's the right technique. All right, listen to this. He says, somebody please inform JayZ that because of my policies, black unemployment has just been reported to be the, and this is all caps, lowest rate ever recorded, exclamation mark. Now, I don't know if that's true, first of all. JayZ called Trump a superbug. So I don't know if that's true, but look at the way that he words his quote. Instead of just, stating that black unemployment is at the lowest rate ever recorded, he of course says it's because of his policies. Some of it probably is. But the way he words it is, somebody please inform JayZ. All right. So instead of just doing a tweet that says, hey, black unemployment is lowest it's been, which would have gotten a lot of attention just because it's the president, but it wouldn't have been super viral. It just would have been bragging on something that went right. But notice how the president always does this part right. He finds the thing to add to a normal tweet to make it a super tweet. All right, a normal tweet is, hey, black unemployment is best ever. That's a normal tweet. A super tweet is, someone tell JayZ. Because as soon as you add JayZ in there, you've got JayZ, criticizing him. JayZ, of course, is a magnet for attention, just as the president is. He's created a sort of a super, what would you call it? A super nemesis conflict, which the media loves. It's like, oh, JayZ's like, well, here's what's cool about it. If you were to try to look at the entire public, the entire population of the United States, and you were going to say, name me one person who could sort of be a comparable, nemesis to President Trump. Who's got the gravitas, the reputation, the juice, the energy, who's got the and even the master persuader chops, right? Who's got the whole frickin' package? JayZ, right? JayZ is pretty close to the black Trump. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't say that. But if you think in terms of their skill set, JayZ has done a similar thing to what President Trump has done, which is he's assembled a skill stack where if you were to look at any one of his skills, it's like, can he hold a tune better than anybody else? No. Can he write better than anybody else? Well, probably not. And you could go down the list and you'd say, well, if you pick any one of these things, he's not the best in the game. But man, if you look at them all together, you become JayZ because his talent stack is so impressive. Same with President Trump. Any one of his skills, you might say, well, I could think of a better at that. But you can't get anybody who's got that whole package going on. So it's just this great super nemesis thing that he's set up to bring attention to the fact that black unemployment is high. So the real message here is black unemployment is the best it's been. Not high, but it's the best it's been. The opposite of high. And And he's got this juicy quote in his tweet to keep us interested. Yes, I would give that an A, that tweet. That tweet is an A. That's my grade for that one. The tweet rhymes. The tweet rhymes, does it? A number of reasons, because it's a problem. Show that don't solve it, only use it. That doesn't rhyme. At least it doesn't look like it rhymes to me. Reread it. All right, I'll reread it. Somebody says this rhymes. I don't hear it rhyming. I have offered DACA a wonderful deal, including a doubling in the number of recipients. I'm sorry, that's the wrong tweet. I was reading the wrong tweet, so let's see if I can go back. Reported and recorded. Oh yeah, it does rhyme. All right, let me read it with a rhyme. I hadn't noticed that. Somebody please inform JayZ that because of my policies, black unemployment has just been reported to be at the lowest rate recorded. Let me do it like a very bad white rapper. Somebody please inform JayZ that because of my policies, black unemployment has just been reported to be at the lowest rate ever recorded. Not bad. Let's see if I can do that even better. I know this is embarrassing, but remember, I'm way past being embarrassed by anything. I can no longer feel the sense of shame and embarrassment that normal people feel. So with that in mind, somebody please inform JayZ that because of my policies, black unemployment has just been reported to be the lowest rate ever recorded. Wait, I got to do that standing up. Somebody please inform JayZ that because of my policies, black unemployment has just been reported to be the lowest rate ever recorded. All right. I'm leaving. Yeah. People are saying, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. I didn't come here for the music. I came here for the coffee. Now I have to, you know what's funny is, I'm reading this thing, and I can't tell if that was intentional. Do you think it's intentional? Because I don't think it's intentional. But what are the odds that he would do a tweet to a famous rapper that kind of works as a rap? Right? I'm not wrong on this, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not the one who discovered it, but, you know, somebody please inform JayZ that because of my policies, black unemployment has just been reported to be the lowest rate ever recorded. Okay, I changed my vote. I changed my vote. I don't think that could be an accident. But maybe. I actually, can you tell? Give me your opinion. Was that an accident? I got no, yes, maybe, absolutely, intentional. If it's an accident, it's just the coolest thing ever. All right. Your assignment today is to tweet me the. I want to see the meme on this. Somebody's got to put this to some kind of music. All right. It probably just flowed out freestyle. I don't know. You know, could it be an accident? This it's kind of blowing my mind because my instinct is to say it's an accident. But how could an accident be that perfect? You know, it wasn't until you pointed it out that I even noticed, but it's kind of perfect. All right. Um, so here, let me talk about another tweet that he did. He was talking about there was one here about Davos where he retweeted Javier, am I pronouncing that right? Javier Blas. And Javier's tweet said the waiting line for Trump's speech in Davos, still nearly 1 hour to go. So this is an hour before his speech in Davos. Has the feeling of teenagers queuing up for a concert. But these are billionaires and CEOs. So the energy thing that, we felt in the United States seems to be just as impressive if you're a bunch of billionaires off in Davos. But here's the funny thing. President Trump, with his instinct for, theater and energy and his, let's call it a nose for the show, right? The man knows what a show looks like. He knows the arc of a movie. He knows theater. He knows the show, all right? And so he retweets, "Thank you for the wonderful welcome." So he goes humble. Thank you for the wonderful welcome. Because the tweet does the work for him. So he doesn't have to brag because the tweet is saying that all these billionaires are waiting in line like teenagers for the superstar. So instead of doubling down on that message, which would be a little too far, he plays it just right. He tweets it and goes, "Thank you for the wonderful welcome." All right. So the president is going into the State of the Union after successful Davos that probably some people didn't see coming. Lowest black unemployment rate. I mean, it's just crazy. It is just crazy that he's coming into the State of the Union so strong. I mean, can you think of anybody who's gone into a State of the Union with this much energy behind him? Maybe Clinton, one of the State of the Unions. Those were pretty strong economy years anyway. So what did... I'm going to go look at JayZ's Twitter feed. Let's see, JayZ. Where the hell is JayZ? JayZ Daily. Well, what is JayZ's Twitter feed? Maybe he doesn't have Twitter. All right. Even Fareed says he's being more normal. Yes. Oh, Reagan. Yeah, Reagan went in pretty strong for his State of the Union. You are right. I still remember the Reagan State of the Union addresses. Do you remember how those made you feel? I was pretty young, so I wasn't really I didn't really have a side. But Reagan always made the country feel pretty darn good. So he was on Van Jones' show. That's what JayZ was on. Okay. So let me ask you this. So the president's offer on DACA is a 12-year path to citizenship. Now, I may be wrong, but I believe a 12-year path does put them at the back of the line. But it also makes their line a guaranteed 12 years, guaranteed if they do what they're supposed to do, stay out of trouble. Doesn't that solve the voting problem? The big problem from the Republican side was, we can't bring in all these people and make them voters because then they'll vote against us. But remember when I was talking about the way to solve North Korea is to make it a 100-year plan for unification. Because if you make your plan long enough, everybody's dead or they don't care, it's just so long in the future. All right, yeah, we'll reunify in 100 years. We'll work out the details in 80 years or so. so that the living don't have to obsess about the decision, because it's sort of the next generation's problem. They just have to do some confident steps while they're alive. This 12-year limit on letting the DACA people vote, keeping them from being citizens means they can't vote, I assume, right? There's nothing else that could mean. Doesn't a 12-year limit sort of solve the Republican problem of we don't want all these new voters on the other side? Because it seems to me if you can't sell this class of people in 12 years, or at least enough of them to get back to the ratio that can get you back elected, if you got 12 years, Republicans, if you can't make a good play for that part of the population in 12 years, well, maybe you don't deserve to win. Maybe 12 years now you don't deserve to be in office if you can't make a good argument for enough citizens. So I think that the president has solved the president's latest offer, I think, is crazy strong, even though the public is saying this isn't going to fly. It looks very flyable to me, and here's why. He's offered the Democrats more than they asked. He is offering to give Republicans enough that they can get over the people who would get legal status. Because waiting 12 years is a little bit of a penalty. It keeps them off the voting rolls, which the Republicans worry about. And they get to be productive citizens who are, paying into the system, etc. I don't know. It looks like a pretty good deal for Republicans, like a really good deal. And it looks like a really good deal for Democrats, except they can't accept it. They can't accept it very well, because it would look like they're losing again, which of course they're going to lose no matter what. So they only have a choice of how to lose. They can either lose in a way that's good for their voters or lose in a way that's bad for their voters, I guess. The president going into the State of the Union with a immigration deal that actually would have the majority of the citizens on its side, on each point. I'm pretty sure each point of the plan has at least a majority, and some of it has 65% approval. Some people say a nope, but I don't know. I don't know which point people are disagreeing with. All right. But does the public realize this? Well, that's what the president can say in the State of the Union. The president can say in the State of the Union, I've got a proposal that on average 2 out of 3 Americans support, and the Democrats are just slowing us down. If we could get this passed, if we could get this thing done, I can work on, infrastructure and healthcare. So how about doing what 2/3 of the country wants us to do and just get past this, and then we can work on these other 2 big things. He's got a really, really strong argument. Now, that doesn't mean it gets passed, but man, is it a good argument. The base won't accept amnesty. Does it matter? Does it matter if the base doesn't accept amnesty? Because when you say the base, you're really talking about 20% of Republicans. Wouldn't you say? Maybe 20% of Republicans would have a real problem with amnesty. And those 20% are going to have to look at their alternatives. They're going to be looking at Joe Biden. They're going to be looking at some other alternative. Now, I don't think it's a deal breaker. If you get 80% of Republicans and 20% of Democrats on board for an immigration deal, you can let your base figure out how they like it over time. And by the way, who can persuade the base better than Trump? He's the best base persuader you've ever seen. Trump only has a 35% approval rating. So I just wrote an article for the Wall Street Journal, an opinion piece that runs on Wednesday unless it changes, but right now it's scheduled for Wednesday. And I'll tweet it down so you can see it. You're going to have to get past the paywall, I think. But it's an article on why President Trump's approval rating seems low, yet he seems to be getting things done. Like, what's that all about? So I'm going to explain that to you in a way that, let me tease this. I'll tease my Wall Street Journal article. I didn't think I could get it published. So there's your tease. There are things I'm going to say in the Wall Street Journal article that I didn't believe any major publication would let me write and then they would publish it. I didn't think it was possible. So to say it's provocative would be an understatement. But the Wall Street Journal worked with me, and apparently I wrote it safely enough that they were willing to put it in their opinion piece. Now, of course, it's my opinion, not the Wall Street Journal's opinion. So they don't ask people to write opinions because they're going to agree with them, right? That's sort of how opinions work. It's not about whether the Wall Street Journal agrees with my opinion. But the fact that they let me, the fact that they are going to let this opinion in, which I hope, by the way, when I call it a provocative opinion, it is very provocative, but it is intended for positive result. In other words, it is intended to get toward a healing situation, especially on race. Okay, let me give you another tease. Race is a part of the opinion piece, and I did not think that they would let me publish the piece I did. Now, it's not provocative in the sense of making, any group angry, but it is going to screw with people's heads. So it's not, it's very pro-people, but it's going to screw with your heads a little bit. So that's my tease for the Wall Street Journal on Wednesday. You called us all racists? I did not. I did not call anybody a racist. Give us more clues. If I gave you more clues, you wouldn't read it. Oh yeah, I just realized people have been saying this in the comments, but I only just connected this, that President Trump completely ignored Eminem, but he responded to JayZ. And I thought the way he responded to JayZ was respectful given the circumstances, right? He could have gone a lot harder. I'm also wondering, does anybody know if President Trump and JayZ have had any meaningful personal interactions in the past? Because I'm kind of thinking they probably know each other, right? It feels like they would. I'd love to know if they have any history. All right. Yeah, Wall Street Journal has a paywall. I don't know if in every situation it's paywalled or sometimes they let you through. I don't know the rule there. Yeah, it seems to me that JayZ and Trump are sort of almost the same person, in a lot of ways. What will be Trump's next big bill? Well, the reporting I hear is infrastructure would be up next, right? But you know what's really boring? Let me tell you what's boring. Infrastructure. Do you think that President Trump can make infrastructure interesting? Because I'll bet he can. So here's what I'd like to see with infrastructure. I would like to see that infrastructure includes bringing factories into urban areas where presumably the real estate is cheap, because if it's a beaten down area, the prices would be low. And the labor would be the people who need the jobs the most. So if you see an urban, sort of jobs element to this, it would be great if the infrastructure thing was paired with construction, training? What's the word? Apprenticeships. So an infrastructure bill that gave some advantages to starting a factory in, let's say, an inner city or some urban area where they need jobs, on top of a training program to pair with the infrastructure program, would be a direct way to address certainly the black unemployment rate, to get it to even yet another record low. And I think that would be a strong play without violating anything that his base would care about, which he always has to watch a little bit. Somebody said an urban factory would not be cost effective, but it depends where you put it, right? If you're putting it in Detroit, probably real estate prices are pretty low in some areas. Amtrak, maybe. So I read an interesting article that I completely agree with. Somebody said that the big problem with employment, especially now when you get to we're reaching what economists would call full employment, which is not really full employment. It just means that the unemployment rate is so low that it's really, really hard for businesses to hire people. They're just running out of candidates. So that's sort of the quick and dirty definition of full employment. And we're about there, right? So in order to get to the next level of jobs, you're going to have to, let me get to the point here. Somebody wrote an article, I wish I could quote it, but the point was that transportation is one of the biggest problems to jobs. Because you might have a terrible job that's close to your home, and it's still better than having a long commute, because the commute itself would be expensive and you might not even own a car. So there are a lot of people who are sort of they're locked in a little island, an economic island, by lack of transportation. So if you had some kind of a transportation solution, and it could be just ride sharing, it could be an app that commuters use specifically for employment reasons, that sort of thing. So there probably is some organizational change that doesn't require any new taxes that could get people more easily from where they are to where they need to be. So any kind of infrastructure change that would help people move from where they are to where the jobs are is going to look like a strong play. Yeah, a lot of people drive 20 hours a week for a job, but here's the thing. If you're driving 20 hours a week for a job, you can afford a car, right? A lot of people can't afford a car, so they don't have an option of getting a job that's far away. Not that that sounds like a fun life, but it might be better than being unemployed. So I keep going back to the Bill Gates project. I haven't seen much on it lately, but Bill Gates was looking at building a city from scratch, in which you just do everything right, using all future technology and everything we've learned. So if you build a city from scratch without having to tear anything down, no legacy systems, what do you get? And one of the things that I believe is going to be part of that project is self-driving cars. Now, if you have self-driving cars, you necessarily get to better efficiency, I think, and then the cost of transportation goes down, and just the ability to go back and forth to places goes way up. So it seems to me that self-driving cars in a city built from scratch is just automatically good for jobs, because it gets people from wherever they are to wherever they need to be, and they don't have to worry about owning a car. A job is probably good enough to get anywhere you want, to pay for self-driving cars as taxis, I suppose. We like driving in America. Well, there will still always be places you can drive. I hate driving, but if you live in the city, you might like it, or you live in the country, you might like it. Yeah, driving is freedom, but self-driving cars that go anywhere are freedom too. Hey, let me ask you a question. This is about self-driving cars. It has nothing to do with prior topics. Is it your understanding that self-driving cars will be in communication with all the other self-driving cars? Or is it your understanding that each self-driving car will be like a human-driven car that will just have its own intelligence and make its own decisions, just sort of looking at things just like a regular car would? So yes, they are now in communication. Because here's the question. The first one. So some people are saying they're networked and connected, etc. Yeah. Because think about how safe it would be if you had only self-driving cars. Because let's say all the self-driving cars are in communication, and here's the key part. There are no human-driven cars in this city. So this is why you sort of need to start from scratch and say, all right, it's only self-driving cars. If they're all in communication, then they also know when one of them has a problem. So if one of them has a problem, the others can make sure they stay out of the way. So let's say there's a car barreling toward an intersection and all of a sudden it disappears from the mesh. In other words, the hive loses connection with the car, but the last thing they saw was that it was heading toward an intersection. All the other cars can just slow down and say, well, let's get out of the way because we're in contact with that car that has a problem. So it's a hacker's dream. Yeah, we'll have to be careful about that for sure. Suppose hackers got into the self-driving car network and there were, millions of cars all driving independently. It seems to me, I'll bet you could program around that so that the worst they could do is affect a car or two and not all of them. Blockchain system. Stephen Miller is very dangerous. Some people are worried about what he'll add to the State of the Union address. Maybe. All right. No self-driving cars. You'd rather have mass transit. Mass transit can only get you so far. All right, so I don't have much else to say today, so today I'm going to have one more sip of coffee, delicious coffee. I hope you have your coffee. And let's drink to the golden age that's coming. I think President Trump will be kicking off the golden age with his State of the Union address. People keep asking me what's the next phase. I've predicted everything up to this point.